Hey folks, Brian here. I want to thank each and every one of you who has liked, reviewed, rated, and subscribed to Confessions of an Arcade Addict and telling your friends and everything like that. Please keep it going. I just recently went up over 500 likes on Facebook, and I'm really, really grateful to each and every one of you. Now on with the show.
I'm home. Welcome to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast, an introspective look at video gaming from the classic era to the modern day. Now here is your host, Brian.
Hey folks, what's going on out there? Brian here, and this is episode number 33 of the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. Not too much going on when last we left off, when I recorded episode 32. Unfortunately, the state of Michigan has gone back into shutdown mode because of the outbreak of new cases of COVID. So I believe arcades are closed for now. I did run by Pinball Pete's a couple of weeks ago, or not a couple of weeks, I think it was like last week as a matter of fact, to just check to see if they were open, and they were shut down, so I was like, oh, this is a bummer. So, yeah, once again, I have to do most of my gaming and get my gaming fix at home. Let's see, I've been playing Path of Exile, I've been playing Battletech, of course, and just having fun, killing things and blowing things up, stress relief, you understand. Let's see, aside from that, just sort of working and getting through, which is going to be a rather crazy time of year. I should say Thanksgiving has just come and gone. A quiet time at home with my girlfriend and my son, and we, stayed in, of course, and we cooked Thanksgiving dinner, and we had a pretty decent time. Food came out good, and it's just kind of fun, just kind of chilling out at home with my son and his mother. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. Let's see, I've did a check through of messages and emails on the various outlets for this show, and nothing's out there. So once again, I'm getting a little tired of repeating myself, guys. I'm sure there's some people out there with some questions. But, if you have a question about anything I've said, about anything that I've covered in the previous 32 episodes, or anything I'm going to cover in this episode, and looking at the list of topics that I have going on, there are going to be certain things coming up that should raise questions, and if you have any, by all means contact me, arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Also, we have a phone number for voicemails. That number is 734-743-2433. Also, we have social media up and running, of course. We are on, or I am, this is a one-man operation right now. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. On Facebook, all you have to do is search for Confessions of an Arcade Addict. It'll take you right to the page. If you want to get a hold of me on Twitter, you can message me at arcadeaddict_B. Instagram, it's at arcadeaddictbrian. And Tumblr is tumblr.com/blog/Confessions of an Arcade Addict. So there are multiple ways of getting hold of the show, as always. So if you've got anything to say, as long as you're nice and what you have to say is constructive, say what you will, and we'll talk about it. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get on with the show. I've got quite a bit to talk about here, so let's just get right into it. Are you experienced?
I'm too old for this. Hiding in front seats like a teenager.
Poppy, I think I'm getting too old for this stuff.
I'm getting too old for this.
Listen, you was born too old for this.
I'm getting too old for this. I'm getting too old for this. Lying wet-arsed in the heather chasing other men's cattle.
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
Maybe we're getting too old for this. What do you think, huh?
I'm not too old for this shit. I'm not too old for this shit. You will not. We're not too old for this shit.
We're not too old for this shit. We're not too old for this.
Say it like you believe.
We're not too old for this shit.
Yeah.
We're not too old for
I'm
this
not gonna
shit.
buy a hemorrhoid cushion.
We're not too old for this shit.
Are you experienced? WWF Superstars. Oh man, this game. This is if I had to rank my top 10 of favorite professional wrestling games, this game is probably top 5, maybe even top 3. Definitely top 5. But this was a wonderful game, and let me get some information going here from Wikipedia, of course. Okay, WWF Superstars is an arcade game manufactured by Technos Japan and released in 1989. It is the first WWF arcade game to be released. A series of unrelated games with the same title were released by LGM for the original Game Boy. Technos followed the game with the release of WrestleFest in 1991, which we will get to. Make no mistake about that, but let's focus on this one. The game features some of the signature moves and trademark mannerisms of the wrestlers in the game. There are also cutscenes featuring Ted DiBiase, Andre the Giant, and Virgil. Mean Gene Okerlund and Miss Elizabeth make appearances as well. Before the first match, the player's chosen team enters the arena via the ring cart seen at WrestleManias 3 and 6. Players select 2 wrestlers to form a tag team. The playable wrestlers are Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior, Big Boss Man, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and the Honky Tonk Man. Up to 2 players can play at once. The players take their team through a series of matches with other tag teams in New York City and then Tokyo. The game features a basic grappling and attack system. From a grapple, the player can either toss the opponent, throw them into the ropes, or go into a headlock, from which 2 character-specific grapple moves can be performed. Each wrestler also possesses standing strikes, running attacks, running counterattacks, ground attacks, and moves from the top turnbuckle. A referee is present in the ring but cannot be attacked or otherwise affected by the wrestlers. It is also possible to brawl outside the ring, provided the players re-enter before a count of 20. There, a table can be picked up and swung at opponents. If both wrestlers go outside the ring at once, their tag team partners automatically jump out to join the fight. Occasionally, one of these partners will wander off screen and return wielding a folding chair. Neither the chair nor table can be taken inside the ring. After 3 matches are won, players get to challenge the Mega Bucks, which is a tag team of the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant, for the final round. Most grapple moves do not work against Andre because of his immense size. The Mega Bucks are not selectable characters. However, there are cheats for MAME that allow them to be used together or separately. The drawback being that if DiBiase or Andre get a submission victory, the game will think that the player lost. Also, there can be sometimes graphical errors which can make the in-ring opponent disappear. That is true because I actually used those. It was fun. But yeah, you couldn't use your the $1 Million Dream for Ted DiBiase, or you couldn't use Andre the Giant's backbreaker because yeah, that's exactly what would happen. To continue. If the player wins the match, a newspaper headline heralding the player's tag team as champions is shown. The player is then taken through another series of 3 matches, one of which will feature DiBiase in Tokyo, and a final match against DiBiase and Andre before the game ends. In Japan, Game Machine listed WWF Superstars in their November 1st, 1989 issue as being the 3rd most successful table arcade unit of the year. Yeah. So let's see, my experiences with it. Okay. When this game came out in 1989, I could not have been happier. I was a huge wrestling fan throughout the 80s, and games like Tag Team Wrestling, Mat Mania, Mania Challenge, and yes, even the quarter-eating Button Masher, the main event, fueled my desire to get into the ring and engage another being in the game of human chess, as Gordon Soley once called the sport of professional wrestling. Spanky's got this game, and I was all about it. My favorite tag team was the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage. I remember one day actually beating Andre the Giant and the Million Dollar Man for the tag titles on one quarter, and I did it with style by hitting Andre with Macho Man's patented flying elbow drop from the top turnbuckle and pinning him. I then promptly got beat by the next team, but I didn't care. I could never top that match if I played the game for 100 years. Technos makes fantastic wrestling games, and this is one of their best ones without a doubt. The only one that's probably better is its sequel, WWF WrestleFest, which we will get to. Okay, so with the information out of the way, let's pivot right to time for some Stragedy.
I'll be damned.
What happened?
Combat tactics, Mr. Ryan.
Oh, I never should have doubted you, boy!
There's a plan in everything, kid. And I love it when a plan comes together.
Hey, it's about time for me to employ a little tragedy.
Time for some Stragedy. Okay, the trick to beating this game is to keep your opponent staggered and dizzy and inflicting enough damage to keep them down for the 3 count, then using your partner to keep the opposition's partner from breaking up the pinfall attempt. Let's use the Ultimate Warrior as an example. When you start the match, you almost always get the first move in, so the best thing to do is hit your opponent with an atomic drop, which is, let's see, you get the initiative, you tap the punch button once to get the headlock, and then you hit the kick button, which I think turns the opponent into giving the atomic drop. That knocks them down, and then they end up getting up. And they're dizzy. From there, you use regular body slams and get him over towards your corner. Then hit another atomic drop on him to dizzy him again. From there, use a running clothesline. Then if you can pick him up off the mat without him actually reversing your grapple attempt, you hit him with the press slam, then go for the pin. From the moment your wrestler goes to pin the opponent, you get control of your partner. You use him to run across the ring and hit the opponent's partner with a running attack of some kind to knock him down while the pin is taking place. It's a 3 count, but it's more like 5 seconds instead of 3. The trick is not to use too many moves in a row, because at some point the opponent will start reversing your grapples and start hitting you with multiple moves, which will drain your health meter really fast. If you have to, tag your partner in, but sometimes even that won't save you from taking damage, and this is where the game starts to eat your quarters or tokens. As you progress in the game, the matches get tougher, so you have to figure out if you've inflicted enough damage to pin your opponent, which, especially when you get through the second set of matches from Tokyo, that's not easy to do, not even close. So yeah, it takes a lot of practice and just getting good instincts for the game and going from there. Let's see. As far as DiBiase and Andre are concerned, they're tough to beat, and that's no hyperbole at all. They are really tough to defeat. DiBiase is a ring technician, and his moves are almost always right on point, from his running drop kick to his running knee strike to his clothesline to his power slam, which is an automatic pin attempt, by the way, to his belly-to-belly suplex and his regular suplex and his back suplex, to the the Million Dollar Dream sleeper hold, which is his finisher. And Andre is just a mountain of a man at 7'5", and he's really tough to hurt. Only the most basic of moves will damage him, and you have to stick and move at first to wear him down. If you're able to get grapples on him, the only thing you can do is whip him into the ropes and either hit him with a back body drop or a drop kick. And you have to keep doing this basic stuff over and over again. You're trying basically to wear him down. When you start to wear him down, The indicator is that you can go for body slams. When you're actually able to body slam Andre the Giant, that's when you know you've got him close to being beat. Although if he gets his hands on you, you might as well line up another token or a quarter, because all his moves inflict a lot of damage and you can't take very many of them. He can just grind you down with open hand slaps and chops. He can hit you with his own knee strikes to knock you down, where then he will try to sit on you and pin you, or he can use an over-the-shoulder backbreaker hold to submit you. If you do inflict enough damage on Andre, like I said, you get the ability to body slam him, and that's the sign where he's close to being beaten. Basically, what I do in that situation, if I'm able to do it, I just basically pick him up and body slam him as much as possible. And then you might want to try and hit him with a move off of the top rope, because you're not going to get your finishing moves on him. That's the difficult part about being Andre. It's sort of like, now that I think about it, it's almost like tag team wrestling, in that you had one opponent that you could use all your moves on, but then you had another opponent that you could only use the more basic stuff, and you had to wear him down because he was so big. But that's pretty much it. The easiest, and I put that word in quotation marks, the easiest way to win is to wear down DiBiase. It's not easy at all, and if you inflict too much damage on him too quickly, he will go for the tag immediately. Do your best to stop him, even though it's kind of hard to do too. You try to cut the ring off from Andre. By what that means is that you want to try to get him on your side of the ring where your partner is, to where he has to go a long way across the ring to reach Andre, and most of the time you'll be in the way. And you just use frequent tags and hit him with dizzy moves, and follow up with running attacks when he's dizzy, and go for pinning attempts. That's the only way to really get him. I've only had the quote-unquote perfect match against this team once, where I wore DiBiase down enough to pin him without having to use another credit to refill my team's health meters. I mean, I love this game. It's a lot of fun, but it is sneaky tough. And that's just how I feel about it. And that is WWF Superstars in a nutshell. So yeah, if you ever played this game and you've got any sort of techniques or methods to beat this game, by all means, get a hold of me. ArcadeAddictBrian@gmail.com. Okay, let's move on to Arcade Review. Arcade Review, Fashion Square Mall, Orlando, Florida. Like I said, this is one of the arcades that I used to frequent a lot with my roommate back in the day, and it took a lot of reminiscing and so forth. And quite honestly, I probably should have messaged my roommate and asked her about Fashion Square Mall and what she remembers of it and stuff like that. But maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll actually get her as a guest on the show one day. I'll message her and I'll find out. But we'll table that for now. Okay. As with all arcade reviews, there's 5 criteria: location, selection, ambiance, functionality, and value. Location is fairly self-explanatory. Where is it? Is it easy to get to? Is it, centrally located? Is it out in the sticks somewhere? Usually, is there ample parking at the place and things like that? Usually, I will put high marks on a place that's easy to get to, plenty of parking, and just things like that. Okay, selection, very easy. You know, how many games do they have? Do you have really good variety? Do they have a good cross section of games? Things like that. Let's see. Ambiance. Let's see. Is there like posters and art or back glasses, adorning the walls of the place? Do they have music coming in through, the PA speakers or whatever? You know, do these things add to the experience of, the arcade in question? Um, is the staff friendly and helpful? Or do they not care about what goes on? Things like that. Functionality, self-explanatory. How do the machines look? Do they work well? If a machine goes down, does it take a while to get it fixed, or do they handle it in short order? Things like that. And values pretty straightforward. Do they run the place on quarters? Do they use tokens? Do they use the free play option? Things like that. And you add all that up and average it out by 5, and you come up with a final score. Each criteria is rated from 1 to 10 with half points coming into play. Okay, so let's get right on to it. Let's see. Location, I gave this 8.0. The Fashion Square Mall was easy to get to. It was on State Road 50, also called Colonial Drive, which is about 2 miles west of State Road 436, which were the two of the major thoroughfares going through town, along with Orange Blossom Trail. At least 2 bus lines went to the mall. I think it was like 3 or 4 bus lines, if I remember correctly. But as always, this is like almost 20 years ago, so my memory is a little hazy. And it was close to downtown Orlando as well, so that gives it extra points as well. I think 8.0 is fair. Selection 7.5. The arcade wasn't very big in size, but they made use of every square foot of that place, and that's the truth. I think they had maybe about, I think the most they ever had was about, I want to say between 30 and 40 machines. They had video games of the day. They had, some of the classics. They also had, I think, like 6 or 8 or 10 pinball machines included in that. And so that makes for a pretty decent cross-section. The best game they ever had, in my opinion, was the Super Street Fighter 2 Tournament Edition, which was this big, huge machine which had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It had 16, I think. It was either, it was 16. 16 control sets. So basically, you could have up to 8 players, up to 16 players play in a Street Fighter 2 tournament style battle, which was a whole lot of fun. I love that game to death. It was one of the best ideas Capcom ever came up with. But yeah, selection 7.5. Ambiance is a 6. For what I remember, they didn't have a lot of artwork on the walls, but they had some, just not a lot. It was, as most non-franchise arcades were in like the 80s and 90s. They were more about more about business. Although this one at least made a small attempt at some decent, it's something to look at aside from the game machines. The staff was okay. They weren't like, out of their way helpful or anything like that, but they did their jobs pretty well, and they kept a really good pretty good view on the place, and they had no problem calling security if somebody was, out of line. So, I'll give it a 6. Functionality 7.5. The machines worked well, and if one went down, it got fixed in a decent amount of time, from that. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but they must have had an agreement with somebody who was really good at fixing electronics because, yeah, if a machine went down, unless it was a specialized machine like a laser disc machine or something like that, it got fixed pretty quickly. And value, I give a 5. The arcade ran on quarters, so that's pretty much average marks. So you add all that together and average it out, and you get a total score of 6.8. As I said in the rundown for this place, this one and its sister arcade at the Florida Mall were fairly important in the arcade runs that my roommate and I used to go on at least twice a week back in the 90s. It was a decent place, small in size, but big in stature, as they had games for every taste. Like I also said, the place closed down in 1996. It came back for a cup of coffee in 1997 before it closed down for good in 1998. It was a shame because I would say probably the beginning of 1998 was the dark times, so to speak, because the arcades in Orlando were starting to shut down all over town. The Fun Machine closed down. These places shut down. I mean, the only arcades that I really knew of that were still around when I left Orlando in 2002 was this one place on International Drive. I can't remember the name of it. I only went there once. And the game room at the McDonald's on International Drive, which was a full-blown McDonald's with a play place, but it also had a game room. So yeah, those are the only places that, were still in existence when I left, to my knowledge. Okay, so yeah, that's the Fashion Square Mall Arcade. You have any thoughts or questions? Did you live in Orlando at that time? Did you used to go to this arcade? Let me know what you thought of it. arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com. Okay, and let's go on to the final segment of this show, which is Home Systems.
There's no place like home.
Hey guys, I'm going home.
Look, this is not a game, Mac.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Shall we play a game?
Love to.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Clear a path! I'm going home!
Okay, Home Systems. The PlayStation 2. Oh yeah, I got some stuff to say about this system for sure. And there's a lot in its history, just like its predecessor, the PlayStation 1. So let's get right on to it. This is, the information, of course, is from Wikipedia again. The PlayStation 2, also known as the PS2, is a home video game console developed and marketed by Sony Computer Entertainment. It was first released in Japan on March 4th of 2000, in North America on October 26th of 2000, in Europe on November 24th of 2000, and in Australia on the same date, as a matter of fact. It is the successor to the original PlayStation, as well as the second installment of the PlayStation console lineup. As a 6th generation console, it competed with Sega's Dreamcast, Nintendo's GameCube, and Microsoft's original Xbox. Announced in 1999, the PS2 offered backwards compatibility for its predecessor DualShock controller as well as its games. The PS2 is the best-selling video game console of all time, having sold over 155 million units worldwide. Over 3,800 game titles have been released for the PS2, with over 1.5 billion copies sold. Sony later manufactured several smaller, lighter revisions of the console, known as slimline models, in 2004. Even with the release of its successor, the PlayStation 3, the PS2 remained popular well into the 7th generation and continued to be produced until 2013, when Sony finally announced that it had been discontinued after over 12 years of production, one of the longest lifespans of a video game console. Despite the announcement, new games for the console continued to be produced until the end of 2013, including Final Fantasy XI, Seekers of Adoulin for Japan, FIFA 13 for North America, and Pro Evolution Soccer 2014 for Europe. Repair services for the system in Japan ended on September 7th, 2018. Wow. Alright, let's do the history. Though Sony kept details of the PlayStation 2's development secret, work on the console began around the time that the original PlayStation was released in late 1994. Insiders stated that it was developed in the U.S. West Coast by former members of Argonaut Software. That's interesting. By 1997, word had leaked to the press that the console would have backward compatibility with the original PlayStation, a built-in DVD player, and internet connectivity. Sony announced the PlayStation 2 on March 1st, 1999. The video game console was positioned as a competitor to Sega's Dreamcast, the first sixth-generation console to be released, although ultimately the main rivals of the PS2 were Nintendo's GameCube and Microsoft's Xbox. The Dreamcast itself launched very successfully in North America later that year, selling over 500,000 units within 2 weeks. Soon after the Dreamcast's North American launch, Sony unveiled the PlayStation 2 at the Tokyo Game Show on September 20th, 1999. Sony showed fully playable demos of upcoming PlayStation 2 games, including Gran Turismo 2000, later released as Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec, and Tekken Tag Tournament, which shows the console's graphic abilities and power. The PS2 was launched in March of 2000 in Japan, October in North America, and November in Europe. Sales of the console, games, and accessories pulled in $250 million on the first day, beating the $97 million made on the first day of the Dreamcast. Directly after its release, it was difficult to find PS2 units on retailer shelves due to manufacturing delays. I remember this, but I will talk about that at the end of this. Another option was purchasing the console online through auction websites such as eBay, where people paid over $1,000 for the console. Yes, they did. The PS2 initially sold well, partly on the basis of the strength of the PlayStation brand and the console's backward compatibility, selling over 980,000 units in Japan by March 5th of 2000, 1 day after launch. That's what you call a success, folks, for sure. This allowed the PS2 to tap into the large install base established by the PlayStation, another major selling point over the competition. Later, Sony added new development kits for game developers and more PS2 units for consumers. The PS2's built-in functionality also expanded its audience beyond the gamer, as its debut pricing was the same or less than a standalone DVD player. This made the console a low-cost entry into the home theater market, which is true. The success of the PS2 at the end of 2000 caused Sega problems both financially and competitively, and Sega announced the discontinuation of the Dreamcast in March 2001, just 18 months after its successful Western launch. Despite the Dreamcast still receiving support through 2001, the PS2 remained the only sixth-generation console for over 6 months before it faced new competition from new rivals, Nintendo's GameCube and Microsoft's Xbox. Many analysts predicted a close three-way matchup among the three consoles. The Xbox had the most powerful hardware, while the GameCube was the least expensive console, and Nintendo changed its policy to encourage third-party developers. Too little too late for Nintendo there. They should have done that before. Let's see. While the PlayStation 2 theoretically had the weakest specifications of the three, it had a head start due to its installed base, plus strong developer commitment, as well as built-in DVD player. The Xbox required an adapter, while the GameCube lacked support entirely. While the PlayStation 2's initial games lineup was considered mediocre, this changed during the 2001 holiday season with the release of several blockbuster games that maintained the PS2's sales momentum and held off its newer rivals. Sony countered the Xbox by temporarily securing PS2 exclusives for highly anticipated games such as the Grand Theft Auto series and Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Sony cut the price of the console in May 2002 from $299 US to $199 in North America, making it the same price as the GameCube and $100 less than the Xbox. It also planned to cut the price in Japan around that time. It cut the price twice in Japan in 2003. In 2006, Sony cut the cost of the console in anticipation of the release of the PlayStation 3. Sony, unlike Sega with its Dreamcast, originally placed little emphasis on online gaming during its first few years, although that changed upon the launch of the online-capable Xbox. Coinciding with the release of Xbox Live, Sony released the PlayStation Network adapter in late 2002, with several online first-party titles released alongside it, such as SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs, to demonstrate its active support for internet play. Also advertised heavily, and its online model had the support of Electronic Arts. EA did not offer online Xbox titles until 2004. Although Sony and Nintendo both started out late, and although both followed a decentralized model of online gaming where the responsibility is up to the developer to provide the servers, Sony's moves made online gaming a major selling point for the PS2. In September 2004, in time for the launch of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Sony revealed a newer, slimmer PS2. In preparation for the launch of the new models, Sony stopped making the older models to let the distribution channel empty its stock of the units. After an apparent manufacturing issue, Sony reportedly underestimated demand, caused some initial slowdown in producing the new unit, caused in part by shortages between the time the old units were cleared out and the new units were ready. The issue was compounded in Britain when a Russian oil tanker became stuck in the Suez Canal, blocking a ship from China carrying PS2s bound for the UK. During 1 week in November, British sales totaled 6,000 units compared to 70,000 units a few weeks prior. There were shortages in more than 1,700 stores in North America on the day before Christmas. Oh wow, that's bad timing. In 2010, Sony introduced a TV with a built-in PlayStation 2. Okay, let's go down to the reception. Okay, initial reviews in 2000 of the PlayStation 2 acclaimed the console, with reviewers commending its hardware and graphics capabilities, its ability to play DVDs, and the system's backwards compatibility with games and hardware for the original PlayStation. Early points of criticism included the lack of online support at the time, its inclusion of only 2 controller ports, and system's price at launch compared to the Dreamcast in 2000. PC Magazine in 2001 called the console outstanding, praising its noteworthy components such as the Emotion Engine CPU, 32 megabytes of RAM, support for IEEE 1394, branded as iLink by Sony and FireWire by Apple, and the console's 2 USB ports, while criticizing its expensive games, quote-unquote, and its support for only 2 controllers without the multi-tap accessory. Later reviews, especially after the launch of the competing GameCube and Xbox systems, continued to praise the PlayStation 2's large game library and DVD playback, while routinely criticizing the PlayStation 2's lesser graphics performance compared to the newer systems, and its rudimentary online service when compared to Xbox Live. In 2002, CNET rated the console 7.3 out of 10, calling it a safe bet despite not being, quote-unquote, the newest or most powerful, noting that the console, quote, yields in-game graphics with more jagged edges, end quote. CNET also criticized the DVD playback functionality, claiming the console's video quality was passable, and the playback controls were rudimentary, recommending users to purchase a remote control. Yeah, I remember that. Using your controller to play DVDs was interesting. Let's see. The console's 2 controller ports and expensiveness of its memory cards were also a point of criticism. Yes, they were. Until third-party developers made memory cards, yeah, it was kind of tough. But let's continue. The slim model of the PlayStation 2 received positive reviews, especially for its incredibly small size and built-in networking. The slim console's requirement for a separate power adapter was often criticized, while the top-loading disk drive was often noted as being far less likely to break compared to the tray-loading drive of the original model. Yeah, that's true. I have the slim model, and yeah, I've had that thing for years, and it just performs. Every time I turn it on and load something up, it just goes. Fantastic reliability. Okay, let's go with sales. Demand for the PlayStation 2 remained strong throughout much of its lifespan, selling over 1.4 million units in Japan by March 31st of 2000. Over 10.6 million units were sold worldwide by March 31st, 2001. In 2005, the PlayStation 2 became the fastest game console to reach 100 million units shipped, accomplishing the feat within 5 years and 9 months from its launch, and this was surpassed 4 years later when the Nintendo DS reached 100 million units shipped in 4 years and 5 months from its launch. By July of 2009, the system had sold 138.8 million units worldwide, with 51 million of those units sold in PAL regions. Overall, over 155 million PlayStation units were sold worldwide by March 31st, 2012, the year Sony officially stopped supplying updated sales numbers of the system. My personal experiences with the system. Well, it's my favorite system by far. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but we'll just go with my notes. I could wax poetic for quite some time. I remember people losing their minds when the system first came out, paying $1,500 or more to get it because there was a shortage at Christmas of 2000. I remember I came up to Michigan to visit my friends, and I was staying with them just before Christmas, I think. It was either just after or just before. I can't remember exactly. It was 20 years ago. But I remember I would look at the paper, and there were advertisements for people who had PlayStation 2s, and they were charging $1,000, $1,500. I think there was one that had $2,000, and the weird thing was, and the sad thing was, is that people were paying that money to get these systems, even though it was the problem with the PlayStation, at least in my opinion, was that the first model of it, it was really, really fragile. You could burn out a PlayStation 2 just by playing DVDs on it. I mean, I still have the first two PlayStation 2s I bought. Neither of them work. They're in my closet. And I have a PlayStation 2 Slim sitting in my entertainment center in my bedroom. And yeah, that was the thing. It was common knowledge that if you used a PlayStation 2 for playing DVDs as well as playing games on it, you would shorten its lifespan significantly. And yeah, it's true. My first PlayStation 2 only lasted me about a year. Let's see. To continue my notes. My first real experience with the system was when I was visiting friends and future roommates in the spring or summer of 2001. They had gotten a PS2 and several games, and the game that we would all compete at was WWE SmackDown Know Your Role. We would make our own wrestlers and go through the storyline to build them up, then we would have matches against each other. It was tons of fun. The game that would really get us going, though, because we were all D&D players, was Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. I think I'm going to cover that in Are You Experienced? I think I kind of have to. It's one of my favorite action RPGs of all time. It was fun to team up and play the game, and we were all serious D&D players. Despite the criticism that the games were expensive, they weren't really that expensive. I think the only time you really started seeing high prices was more of the games that were adapted from popular Japanese games. I think the average price for a PlayStation 2 game was like $49.99 or something like that, which was not really that expensive considering. If you go back one generation back to the PlayStation 1, and those games were only averaging about $40. So $10 increase per generation is about right, actually. Let's see. Yeah, even brand new, they weren't that expensive. So by the time I moved with them in October 2002, they'd built up quite a collection. Shortly after I moved in, I bought my own PS2, like I said, which I promptly killed because I was not only playing games on it, but I was running movies off of it as well, which was deadly to the first generation of PS2s. I think they fixed that in the next go-round of models that Sony was sending out, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that's what happened. I bought another one in the summer of 2003, and that one lasted me about 5 or 6 years until it died too. Shortly after that, I bought a PS2 Slim, and it still works to this day. I think I've had that PS2 Slim for... Well, actually, I take that back. I bought a second PS Slim, so okay. So that's a total of 3. I think that's how it went. No, that's right. No, I think I bought my PS2 Slim in like 2008 or something like that, 2009. And I've had that thing for 10 years and it still works. I love it. That thing just, every time I turn it on, it just sits there until I say, I want to play a PS2 game. And then I just, pop the top, throw in a game, close it, turn it on, and it just works. And that's awesome. There's a reason why this system is the best-selling home console of all time, in my opinion. The games. This is something that has been lost since the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, and probably still is the same now that the PS5 and the Xbox One X have come out. And I think it really started with... It might have even started with the PS3 and Xbox 360. It wasn't exclusivity that made the PS2 and gave it its legendary status. It was the inclusivity. The system had nearly 4,000 titles made for it during its run, and that library made it the system to have. I mean, sure, the Xbox was a more powerful system, and the GameCube was cheaper, but in the end, if you don't have the games to back up the system, it's going to fail, like the Dreamcast did. I mean, basically, the PS2 comes out in 2000, and shortly after that, the Dreamcast, Sega just folds on the Dreamcast. Which is a shame because they made really good games for the Dreamcast, but yeah, the PS2, just like I said in episode 31, when I was talking about the PS1, the PS1 made Sony a juggernaut, and the PS2 made it almost unbeatable. I mean, sure, the Xbox had prettier games because their system was better, had better specifications, and the GameCube was cheaper, but yeah, I mean, the PS2 still beat them out, and it wasn't even really close. I mean, just the fact that this system has sold over 150 million units through its lifespan that's the proof in the pudding right there. I still play games on it to this day, and at last count I have about 50 to 65 titles for it. I haven't counted lately. If I want the games bad enough, I will buy them off of Amazon and other reputable retailers. Truth be told, if my PS2 Slim died tomorrow, I'd go right out and buy another one if I could find it. The system is iconic, the games were awesome, and it has more than earned its place at the summit of the video gaming mountaintop. The home video game mountaintop, let's say. So yeah, that's the PlayStation 2. If you have any thoughts, questions, I mean, God only knows, I'm pretty sure about 75 to 80% of my audience, as small as it is, have owned a PlayStation 2 because the Spotify breaks down my listeners by age group, and by far the largest age group is like, what was it? Was it 30 to 49 or something like that? I'd have to look at the statistics, but yeah, it's people around my age. Those people who were there back in the 70s and 80s and so forth. But yeah, I mean, if you owned a PS2, hey, let me know what you thought. ArcadeAddictBrian@gmail.com. Okay, and that's episode 33. Let's see, looking ahead to episode 34. I have another top 10 coming. Let's see, what else do I've got? Of course, our experience in Time for Some Stragedy. And I have an on the road segment as well. So, this is Brian saying, have fun out there, good gaming, stay safe, stay smart, au revoir.
This has been the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. All music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his music at incompetech.com. You can contact the show by email at arcadeaddictbrian@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 734-743-2433. Until next time, you have been listening to the Confessions of an Arcade Addict podcast. See you then.